and welcome to Kitchen Queen. Today we are going to be showing you how to make a Christmas pudding. We'll actually make two puddings, or this recipe will make two puddings, so feel free to, you can cut the recipe in half if you just want to make one pudding. This quantity will make two 2-pint bowls puddings, so if you imagine it turned out, I would say that would easily serve 8 people or 6 hungry people. But don't forget, if you have leftovers, it does store really well. And equally, you can of course make a slightly bigger pudding, but you'll just need to add a little bit of cooking time when it comes to steaming. So for this size, I am using 600 grams of dried fruit. I've got 200 grams of very roughly chopped prunes for nice and for stickiness, 200 grams of sultanas, and 200 grams of currants. Now you can of course use other dried fruits, any of currants, raisins, sultanas, prunes, even chopped dates. You can use candied peel, and do feel free to add in some nuts as well if you're a nut fan. Chopped almonds work really well, as do pecans, walnuts. The options are endless. Anyway, you want to start with about 600 grams. So into there, you want to soak your fruit, which I already have done, in 250 ml of liqueur of your choice. Now Nigella uses, which I love, so I've stolen this idea from her, Pedro Ximénez, if my pronunciation is correct, sherry. It's a really, really thick, syrupy sherry. It's very sweet and it's just divine. As you can see, we've managed to get through the rest of the bottle. Not just drinking, cooking as well. But it is really lovely, and in actual fact it's slightly more cost effective than your traditional brandy. So I would recommend giving that a try, but otherwise do feel free to use brandy or whiskey, or I know Delia uses stout. Again, the options are pretty endless. So I'm going to take my dried fruit, or I'm just going to pop my dried fruit to one side actually. I've got in here 170 grams of breadcrumbs, and I've literally just taken an old end of a French stick that I had. I didn't even bother cutting the crusts off, and I just blitzed it briefly in the food processor. So you've got fairly fine breadcrumbs. Doesn't matter too much if they're a bit more rustic than that though. So the beauty of digital scales, and you'll have to excuse my scruffy scales, is I'm just going to pop my bowl straight on there and add everything else into it. So we'll switch that on. I'm going to add into there, if they'll work, 4 eggs, there's absolutely no creaming, fluffing, folding or anything with this pudding. So it's the kind of thing everybody can get involved with. If you've got children, make it over a weekend, and they'll quite enjoy getting stuck into this. So 4 eggs, and then we'll do a couple of teaspoons of mixed spice. And I'm sure you've heard me say this before, if you've had lessons with us or if you've watched other videos. I'm a generous measurer, so don't hold back. So 2 teaspoons of mixed spice, a couple of big spoonfuls of, I'm going to use black treacle. You can use honey or agave syrup. It's completely up to you, but that will just help sweeten it slightly and keep it nice and moist. So you can see my spoonfuls are quite big. You can't really go wrong with a Christmas pudding though, so don't be shy. Scrape that off. Okay, and then we'll add a heaped teaspoon of baking powder. And that will just give you a bit of rise. Not that, much like the Christmas cake we made the other day, this isn't going to be a light and fluffy cake per se, not like a Victoria sandwich. You want it to be dense and sticky, but somewhat crumbly. And then we'll add 200 grams of dark muscovado sugar. You could use light muscovado sugar if you didn't like it to be so kind of molassy in taste. And equally, if you've only got soft brown sugar, then that will be absolutely fine. Oops, okay. And then 200 grams of suet, and you can get vegetarian suet if you prefer to, because this is technically not veggie. Now it just so happens that a box is 200 grams, so I can just throw that whole bag into there. And then 135 grams of plain flour. Set that back to 0. Okie dokie. And then I'm going to do the zest of an orange and a lemon. Now I wonder, this was the gadget I was looking for. So you can either use a zester, or you can use a little grater or a big grater. This will give you quite kind of pronounced strips of zest, which I quite like. But if you're not such a fan, you can just finely grate it. So 1 lemon, and then we'll also zest an orange. Try and buy unwaxed if you can, particularly lemons. If they are quite waxy though, you can always just pop them in some hot water, give them a wipe, and that will get rid of that waxiness, that waxy residue. Whoops, split that one. Okay, and then also into there, I'm going to add, I've peeled it, a big cooking apple. So it really is big. Don't worry if yours isn't quite so big. But if it's particularly small, if it's the size of a Granny Smith apple, then you might want to use 2. So I'm just going to take that and grate it all the way round. So grate it round and round, like that, like you'd eat an apple, and then you can just discard that middle bit. So I'm going to pop my grated apple in there. Lovely. And then I'm just going to take a big spoon. You can use a spoon or a spatula. I'll probably end up using both. I'm just going to start mixing it, because again, I've chosen a stupidly small bowl, relatively speaking, given the amount of mixture that we've got. This sounds silly. If you're going to do, say if you want to make 4 puddings, or a couple of even larger puddings than this, then you could even use a big Tupperware container. They're quite useful. Or you could just buy a new washing up bowl and use that to mix. Because sometimes actually, just for this time of year doing this kind of baking, you don't always want to go and spend £20 on a big, ceramic bowl. It's a bit pointless. And then you only need to house it somewhere. If you see any big lumps of sugar, just kind of break them up a bit, chop through them. And then, so that's all pretty well mixed. I'm going to pop my soap. So yet again, the camera has let us down. It literally just cut off as I was adding the fruits. So I've added the dried fruits, 600 grams, with the 250 millilitres of liqueur. And I've just given everything a really good stir. So no folding, nothing required. You can literally just get in there. So if you've got children, now's the time, well, traditionally actually, now at the stirring part, then is when all of your family come along, each have a stir, each make a wish. And then once it's all really well combined, so you can see that's combined really easily. It's quite a slack mixture. Once that's all combined, we'll then divvy it between our 2 pudding basins. So I'm just going to pop that out of the way. So I've got 2 2-pint basins, and all I've done is get some fingers on my butter, get some butter on my fingers and smear it all the way around, so reasonably liberally, and that should just help your pudding slide out come the big day when you want to get it out more. So I'm literally just going to divide that mixture between the 2. If you've got a little bit left over, you can always make a couple of miniature puddings, but usually this is about right. So pack it in. And this is another one of those bowls that's actually quite nice to lick. So I don't think anybody will complain if you do have leftovers. So as you can see, that fits between those 2 bowls quite nicely. You've got a couple of centimetres room in the top, which is good. You want a little gap there, really. Just going to grab a spatula and scrape out the excess. Okay. And then make sure it's well packed into the bottom of the bowl. On the top, just spread it out so it's reasonably flat. And now we need to cover them. So, I'll just wipe my sticky fingers. So I've cut out 2 discs of baking parchment, 1 for each pudding. I'll pop 1 on there. If you've got a little bit of butter around the rim of your bowl, that's not a bad thing, because it will just keep that circle in place. Or you can dip your finger in the mixture and just put a few dabs of mixture there, just to keep it from springing up out of place and frustrating you. I'll just do 1 for the sake of us doing this now. So then get 1 piece of foil and then another one, just to be safe, like that, over the top. And the foil should kind of shape itself somewhat, so that will help you in the beginning. So shape that around there, and then you just want to tie that. You could, if you've got a big elastic band, you could tie, you could pop an elastic band over it, but I don't, so I will just tie it with a piece of string. I'm also just going to pop the kettle on, so that's hot. So we'll tie this around here. Like that. This is the fiddliest bit of making the pudding, to be honest. It's just tying the string around. So that's on there like that there. It's just really to keep that in place. It shouldn't go anywhere anyway. So I will do the same to this pudding as well. And then in terms of cooking it, you can either use a traditional kind of, well, not traditional, an electric steamer, you know, a plug-in one. If your tiers are big enough to fit that depth of bowl in, then you can use that. But otherwise, I tend to use a big pan. Now usually, actually, your biggest saucepan, ordinary saucepan, should do it, but unfortunately I've got silly pans that are just a little bit too shallow, so I'm going to have to use this big casserole. So just take your casserole dish or your big saucepan and pop a plate in the bottom. Don't use your finest china, but this isn't fine china, needless to say. So pop that in the bottom, and that will just stop the pudding, especially if you're on an induction hob or electric hob where the heat is very, very direct. It will just stop the bottom of your pudding from catching. So I'm just going to pop that in there on the plate. If I hold that up to the camera, you should be able to see that, like that. And then pop that on here. And then all I'm going to do to steam it is to fill it halfway, put water in, fill it up to halfway up the side of the pudding basin, pop the lid on, and then I'll time it. That will need about 4 hours steaming. It doesn't matter if it has 5, but definitely 4. And then at that point, once it's finished steaming, all you do is remove it out of the pan. Just be careful, obviously, it will be hot and steamy. Let the steam go away, and then just pop your oven gloves on to lift that out. Or you can even be clever and make a little handle that goes over there with string, but just be careful that your string doesn't give way. So anyway, once it's cooked, remove it, so it's had its 4 hours, remove it, untie the string, pull off the paper, pull off the foil, and then just recover it with a new piece of paper, like this, and a new piece of foil, pop it on, tie it with string, and then not only does that prevent the pudding being sat there in storage with wet foil around it, but it's ready to go then for Christmas Day. So for Christmas Day then, all you do is re-steam it again to heat it back through. So you pop your pudding back into your either electric steamer or your steamer basket on the hob, or if you're like me and you're just using a pan with a plate, back into your pan. And on Christmas Day that will want 2 hours just to heat through again. And then once it's had its second steam, you serve it, and from there, if you've got leftovers, you can just microwave them or wrap them in a piece of foil and pop them in the oven. So we'll pop that in there. Oops. And there we go. Pop the lid on, pop the heat on, and that's good to go. Last but not least, when you serve it, just run a palette knife around the edge, upturn it onto a plate. You'll need some oven mitts or a tea towel to help you, because obviously it will be hot. And then what you can do, you can heat up a small amount of brandy or even vodka, anything that's flammable, dare I say. Heat up a small pan, and then just before you get it to the table, set it alight and pour it over your pudding, and that will flame it beautifully. If I've got chance, perhaps I will do it with a little pudding, and I will pop a video online on how to flame, just so as we don't end up with burnt eyebrows on Christmas Day. But the flaming aside, as much as it's a bit of a kind of party piece, you don't have to flame your pudding. It'll be lovely just served as it is, with custard or cream or ice cream or all three, and of course lots of brandy butter, which we can also show you how to make. So that's it for today. I've got my pudding rumbling next to me. It's definitely steaming. Thank you so much for watching. Needless to say, if you've got any comments, if we can be of help at all, if you come to cook this recipe, then please do get in touch, or you can find us on Facebook. Just search for Kitchen Queen and add any comments to our page there. Likewise, if there's anything else that you'd like to see us cook that you think would be helpful, please do add a comment onto Facebook or get in touch with us, and we will do our best. Further to that, any further information, feel free to get in touch. Our web address is www.kitchenqueen.co.uk. If anybody would like any lessons, we'd love to hear from you. And similarly, we are offering gift vouchers for the cooking lessons that we offer. So if you have any foodie friends, husbands, dads, parents, then feel free to get in touch and we can pop a gift voucher in the post for you. And we will look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you. Bye for now.